But then also that's a process, isn't it? Getting to the point of going, right, there's something that I need to share. How am I going to share this? And, you know, hopefully that the more chats we do have, the stigma and shame will become less. But yeah, hopefully we can say these things to our friends, and that there's grace allowed. Like, you know, it's, you know, for people joining that may not know what PMDD is or ever experienced it, it really can be debilitating for anyone with a cycle or a period that is dealing with these symptoms. You know, there are many cases that say very similar things about how 2 weeks of a month can be extremely difficult to do your usual life. Another person that submitted a PMDD cycle story has also shared that it's almost like your identity becomes quite a blur. These things can sound incredibly abstract to people, I'm sure, but yeah, it's very jarring. It's not just like insecurity or sensitivity. It's like this thing that comes around in 2-week waves and says, where you essentially don't believe that you can do the things that you love doing, or like almost dread the things you love to do, or like, you know, yeah, it's a really difficult thing. And I think the more we have the awareness there for people, well, for bosses to be aware of this. Just being in our industry, it's kind of unforgiving for anyone that
definitely, especially like the film industry is so male dominated. And you know, I've just come off of a job working abroad, and I was working 6 days a week. I was the only woman as part of the construction team from the UK. So I was in a workshop full of men and I got to a point, luckily I worked with at least one of the people for a good 3 or 4 years, and I had a really bad moment where someone had said something to me about being a woman, said that they were attracted to me in some way, or like it was a roundabout way, and I was just like, just leave me alone. It's like, I'm here to work just like you're here to work. I just want to come in, I just want to get my money, and I want to leave, and that's all I want to do. And one of this guy, my supervisor that I work with, I've worked with him for three or 4 years. He could tell that I was just not in a good place. At the end of the day, he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm sick of it. I'm absolutely sick of it. I can't do it. I just can't. It's awful." But he was amazing, because he then, you know, took me for a drink. He was like, "This is awful. I'm really sorry that you can't, like, you're not feeling like you can cope right now." Took a day off the next day. I was very supported in that, especially by him. But like you said, it takes time to be able to build a kind of foundation like that with someone, where you are able to share that with them. And it's just, that is also because I'm someone that's able to talk about my period, and the sooner that we can end the stigma and the shame, the more likely it is that people are able to talk about their mental health and how they're dealing with their day-to-day lives. And my boss back in the UK who's on another job, but he's really great as well. I haven't spoken to him specifically about PMDD, but I have spoken to him about my period, and you know, he's been like really supportive in that, going, you know, don't harness yourself up and climb all over stuff, and don't do like all the really aggressive work that you would normally be doing, like the heavy lifting, because it's wild what a period can do to your body, like physically. The feelings of being like lethargic and exhausted, like the brain fog that you mentioned, like all of those things, that can be really difficult when you're working a very physical job. It can be difficult anyway if you're just doing like a 9 to 5 in front of a computer. It's tough. So being able to share that with people that you work with, you see on a day-to-day basis, I'm very lucky in that the people that I have been working with support me in that. But then also that means that I'm just incredibly loyal to them as a team. So if you're on the receiving end of someone saying to you, "I'm struggling with this, with my period," or, you know, whatever, then it can only help you to be supportive. And like, yeah, I'm sure you understand, like the film industry is difficult with that. Like you go to the bathrooms, you can't even find a tampon. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think about the amazing work that Bloody Good Period are doing, and I just like would just want everyone to be taking them up on their course.
The workplace.
I don't remember what it's called.
Bloody good employers.
Yeah. Absolutely amazing. I saw a talk about it last year and was just like, yes, we need this so much. And to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but I don't know if any other organisations or charities are targeting specifically, or of that scale anyway, targeting to be like, how inclusive are your offices? Do you have awareness about a cycle? And just like we need the absolute like foundational pieces of info to just be widespread. I am often thinking like, how can I bring like cis men into this conversation? And obviously it's not only men in leading roles, but like this needs to be common ground. So it's like the compassion does create action, I think, and I think that there has to be the knowledge, then the compassion, then the action. And I just think, like, you know, thank God are doing it. There's also visual practitioners I know that are getting more into doing workshops in the corporate sector.
Casey Robinson works a lot with Bloody Good Period, I think, in the Bloody Good Employer scheme, and she's amazing. She's got an account called, what is it, something inclusion, equity, inclusion, well-being. But if you search Casey Robinson, she's amazing, and she does workshops with like this all the time. It's the conversation, and even like Bloody Good Period, like obviously they're doing so much of this work and they are a charity, and it's amazing to be able to donate if you are able to donate to them. But even they say, you know, if you're not in the position to be able to do that, even just like having conversations around it is helpful to the cause.
Yeah. So Sam, have you, like, would you say month to month PMDD shows up differently? And would you agree that depending on it's like your internal world and your external world? So for me, I could relate to thinking, well, actually, my symptoms really dimmed down and became, I think, what it is in general to be PMS, which at this time it must have been quite a severe PMS, or if I case of PMDD, I wasn't quite sure, but I was like, this feels out of whack for me. And when that started to dim down, I'd realised, well, actually, I've really shaken up my life in a way. Like, I'm living really calmly back at my family's house during lockdown. Film was frozen, as you know, for a month, and that was quite a weird time because we were like, is anyone gonna when's this gonna get back on the show, that show on the road? But then it went steaming ahead. But in that time, I basically slowed right down, no coffee, walks every day, bed at the same time every night, just because there was not much else to do. We were locked down, and also was very particular about who I shared my energy with. And I'd come out of a breakup and having that particular energy like away from me, and really realizing how detrimental that was to my inner world was insane. And it's like, I guess what I'm asking is, can you relate to that? Have you found that you're keeping boundaries in your outer world means that your PMDD can be better or worse?
Absolutely, yeah. It varies cycle to cycle, to be honest. Like sometimes the symptoms will be more similar to PMS, and I'm like, that's fantastic. I can't believe I just got away with that one. But sometimes it can be debilitating, you know, like feelings of, you know, suicidal ideation. That's when it gets really bad for me, and that's just really hard, because that symptom, you know, I don't want to die, but then having those thoughts, it's like, that's not me, but why am I feeling this way? So in bad cycles, when that happens, I'm like, I really need to rest. Like, I really need to shut off from everything and everyone. But I realized, actually, working abroad and working 6 days a week without my like family and my best friends around me, what I did was shut off, and that was the absolute worst thing for me. And it started to get like worse and worse after the first month of being there. And I realized, actually, just one nice wholesome conversation with one of my best friends on the phone, on FaceTime, once a week would have just really been helpful to me. But yeah, the boundaries thing, it's hard, because you'll have a cycle where you think that oh, that's just PMS, that's fine. And then the next month, you know, you'll just be like, okay, well, that one was fine, so maybe I can schedule in some more dinners with friends, or like I'll go to a gallery visit, or I'll take myself out and do this, or and then you're like doing every single day exactly the same. And then that's when I find, for myself, I experience really, really bad symptoms. And I just need to realize that, okay, I'm tracking my cycle. I should really look into that and be much more aware, because one cycle might be fine, but then the next one, I have no idea. It could be really, really awful. But weirdly, what I have discovered for myself is that my heavier periods and the ones that end up being more painful, I will have just experienced really, really awful symptoms from PMDD just the week or two before. And then it will be this like relief of this like really painful period, but like just a rush of blood. And then I'm like, oh my God, I feel so much better now. So I don't know what the link is there, because I'm not a doctor, but there just needs to be more research, like we said, on into these things.
Interesting connection between there being like a worse case of PMDD becomes, it shows itself as quite painful period.
But again, it's like, so then I know to get like the CBD oils and rubs from I'm On and stuff like that, you know, and just like that will really help me, like have a few more baths. Remember to do exercise, but not something that's like a really crazy impact, like low impact exercise, but exercise does really help, especially like just 15 to 30 minutes every day. But yeah, even that, again, it's really difficult to do. There's so many things that you have to think about to make sure that you're constantly doing. And sometimes, especially with freelance work, you're not able to do that. And for me, the thing that's helped my mental health the most is going for runs and like doing like at least 2 or 3 5-kilometer runs a week. Like, I know people hate running. I'm someone who loves running. And that has been super, super helpful, you know, those rush of endorphins, etc. But I've just really hurt my ankle, and now I'm having physio and I can't run as much. And now I'm like, oh my God, how's that going to affect my menstrual cycle? And how's that going to affect my mental health? So now I'm like, okay, well, I can't just shut it off completely. I need to make sure I'm just doing low impact exercise and just have to adapt to these changes and these shifts that happen, etc.
Yeah, and just keeping moving. I think that's such a good takeaway, like really just trying to keep it in motion, because obviously one of the symptoms you can feel overwhelmed and pent up and frustration, anger, sadness. And I really do believe that like emotion is energy in motion. And so if we are physically moving and we try and keep it going, and not, like you say, exerting ourselves, but like sometimes just I'll get on my yoga mat and just do some stretches, and I'm like, do you know what, that was it. That's enough.